We'd go to dinner together and stuff like that. It was like a real band. It was pretty cool.
Would Dave join you, or was it just the band?
Sometimes he would.
Okay.
It kind of depended on him. Sometimes he would join us. He was doing some physical things, like he was doing the long bike rides and stuff like that, get himself in shape. Sometimes we didn't see him, but when he was available and when he felt like coming out with us and stuff like that, he would, and we'd all go out and have a good time.
That's awesome.
We had a good time. It was really like a band.
Yeah.
It really was.
That's great.
Yeah.
Greg and Brett had worked with Dave the longest. Did they tell you and the rest of the band, look, this is how you deal with Dave if you want to stick around?
You really think I'm going to answer that, huh?
Yes, I do.
Well, did they give you the ropes? Did they give you the ropes?
Here's the deal, man. I got to tell you this, and in all honesty, one of the things you learn as a musician is how to be a musician. And one of the ways you can be a great player but not a good musician. And one of the ways you become a good musician is you don't give a shit about any of that stuff. So here's the deal. Nobody said to me, this is how David is, or he does this, or he does that, or nobody said anything that to me, because each of us respected each other, that we've had to work with different people under different circumstances, and you just learn how to work with people. I never felt anything weird from David at all, any more than I did from Alice or Lou Reed or anybody that I've worked with, Peter Gabriel, anybody. When it got into making music, that's all that mattered.
When did you realize that Jason was having health issues? At what point in the whole process?
Well, one day he comes over to my apartment to have a lesson, and he kind of stumbles in the door. And I was joking with him. I said, well, what happened? Did you stub your toe? What's the matter? And he said to me, I don't know. And I said, well, now, wait a minute. What do you mean you don't know? He said, no, I'm telling you, I don't know. My leg just sometimes doesn't work right. And I said, well, man, you got to get that checked out. And
right,
he says,
right.
He says, yeah, I'm going to go see a doctor next week, and we're going to try to figure out what's going on. And I said, well, let me know, would you? What the hell?
Right.
So I kind of worried about it a little, because I had just a tiny bit of medical training back when I was in the Army in 68 to 70. I was an X-ray technician.
Okay.
And I couldn't figure out, he's only 20 years old, 21 years old.
Right.
And he's already having some sort of weird neurological thing at that age. It really worried me a little. But we kind of let it go. But then when we went to Vancouver, it was already starting to get a little bit worse. It had only affected his legs, not too much, but enough to notice. His playing is still superb.
Right.
And
no, of course.
His playing on that album is just silly. You know? But it just generally got worse and worse and worse. And then, like, the next time I saw him, he was walking with 2 canes because his legs weren't working. Next thing I know, he's in a wheelchair. I mean, it's horrible. It was just horrible.
I know.
Yeah.
We all feel horrible about it. So he was able to make it through the whole album process, right?
Yes, he was. Thankfully, because I think it's some of his most brilliant playing.
Oh, of course. That's part of what makes the brilliance of the album. So now, in terms of replacing him, did that really change things in the chemistry in the band?
Well, I wasn't a part of anything. As soon as the album was done, I was done.
Okay.
Dave was putting together a live band. I don't know, for whatever reason. I think he probably wanted a couple of young guns. Listen, man, I'm a musician. I understand what people look for. There's sometimes a difference between the people they look for the studio and the people they look for live.
Sure.
So it didn't even faze me. I just thought, yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. I think Joe Holmes was the guy. And then there was another guy, which I don't remember his name, but there was another guy that toured with him for a little while.
Right.
So I don't know if it did or not, because once the album was done, I was out.
Okay. Now, when you guys did the album, did you stay at a hotel together? I had heard that you guys stayed in like some sort of like Fleabag motel or something.
It's exactly right. It was pretty Fleabag. I shared my room with a couple of mice.
Oh,
they
wow.
They were very nice. No, I'm kidding. No, it was pretty. Dave wanted to go back to the old rock and roll roots.
Right.
I guess I understood that, but I certainly would have liked it to have been a big posh hotel.
Right, of course.
But, it's okay. We still had fun. Jason and I had a lot of fun together when we were up there, man. We did all sorts of stuff together.
David Lee Roth stayed at that hotel too, right?
Oh, he absolutely did. And he had a room just like we did. Nothing new. He didn't have a suite or anything.
Yeah.
He just stayed in a room like we did.
Did he explain that whole process and why he wanted to stay at a Fleabag motel?
Yeah, he just said, let's try to get back to our rock roots. Let's try to get back to when we first started and we were having to stay in these really horrible hotels, then go into the studio and make great music. It sort of puts a little angst on you, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
None of us were fazed by it. They said, okay, well, if that's what you want to do, we're there. Well, let's do it. Let's make a record. It didn't faze anybody.
Sure.
We just got into it. We got into the vibe of it.
And you worked with many different producers. What was it like working with Bob Rock?
Oh, man, he's got to be the easiest going guy in the world to work with. He's so wonderful. He has great ideas. He's very low key. He's not like jumping up and, let's do this. He comes up with these wonderful ideas and tries things. And when he says, yeah, that's good, it's good. You know what I mean? He's very low keyed, but he's very keyed into the vibe of the track. So he knows exactly what's going to work and what he likes. I love working with him. I'm hoping I can work with him again someday.
Absolutely. And in terms of working with the Bissonette brothers, how was that?
I love those guys to death. I know Greg a little better than Matt, but I just love those guys to death. First of all, they're incredible players and musicians, but they're great guys to hang with. I just saw Greg about a year ago, I think. He's just the same. He's just the most wonderful guy. Plus he's just a genius player, So it's a joy to hang with him. It's a joy to play with him.
So now you did the 4 songs, Tell the Truth, and you did Babies on Fire, 40 Below, and the Dogtown Shuffle. So tell me about the song origins. Tell the Truth. How did that one come about?
When Brett and I got together to write, we would say, we need something with this kind of groove, right? We would play through some songs, and I think one of them was a Jeff Beck song, and we liked the groove. We would say, okay, well, let's get the tempo and the groove. And then as you're writing, that changes a little. But that's how you get started, So each song sort of comes about that like that. Or Tuggle might say, we need something that's got these kind of changes. And he'd play them on the keyboard and I'd play them on the guitar. And then next thing you know, something's coming out. Or he would say, we need something that's got maybe a Zeppelin feel, but maybe more like a Cream groove. We do that kind of thing and just sort of discuss where we wanted it to start. And then we'd start it there, and then it would build and develop on its own. It ended up being a really good way to work. We actually, we enjoyed doing it. It was fun.
Now, Tell the Truth wound up being one of the singles off the album. Dave really took to that one. I thought he did a fantastic job on that. That song in particular, I think, shows a whole other side to Dave. And I've been saying for years that Dave should do a blues album, because between that and Lady Luck, I think he really kind of showed his blues chops.
Well, I wish he had done a blues album, too, because I tell you, he has a great appreciation for blues, and he loves blues, and he's got a feel for it, and he's got the voice for it. To tell the truth, I remember, I think that was maybe it been the second song Tuggle and I wrote.
Okay.
And I just really loved the feel of it.
Babies on Fire was another incredible one. That almost harked back to a little bit of the Van Halen flavor. Do you remember how that one came together?
Well, okay, that one was the one I think has got a little bit of Zeppelin in it, and it's got a little bit of Cream in it.
Okay.
So we put the two things together, and I kind of came up with a riff that I thought sounded a bit like Zeppelin, but had Cream in it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's how that song came about. It was more like we wanted to have that sort of intensity that Zeppelin were really good at coming up with their riffs and stuff.
Sure.
And that's how that came about, It's really funny when I think back on it. The way Tuggle and I wrote really, really did work well for us. He's really great to work with. He comes up with great ideas, and he's also one that I can play a riff, and he'll say, "Oh, yeah, no, I like that one. Let's go off of that." Because sometimes, as a guitar player, you're playing riffs and stuff. You just think, well, they just all sound, they're just guitar riffs, Sometimes it takes a second person to say, no, that's cool. We got to take that little thing and let's make something out of that,
Absolutely. And what about 40 Below? That's another tasty rocker. What was the story behind that one?
And I know there was one song that Tuggle and I sat down. This is after I think we'd written a couple things together. We just sat down in his studio, plugged in the guitar, and I just started banging away on something. He said, "Oh, that's great. What's that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm just kind of warming it." No, we got to go with that. And I think that's where 40 Below came from. It's just I was kind of banging away on something,
Sure.
And Tuggle really liked it, so we just developed it into the song.
Now, the Dogtown Shuffle had a more gritty sound to it. That was a really kind of cool track. What was the emphasis behind that?
Okay, first of all, the thing I love about that one is it's a shuffle. I absolutely love shuffles. And we were looking for something that had a slow groove, but a shuffle groove. I think that one took us a couple of days to write because we were trying a lot of different things. And then I think at one point we thought we had kind of wrote too much. We'd gone past it, So I went home and I came back the next day and Tuggle said, well, wait a minute. If we take this one section and simplify it. I don't remember which one. Well, I think it was probably the bridge. But he said, yeah, let's just simplify it and play it like this. And then I heard it. I said, well, yeah, that's good. So we put the whole thing together on a demo and listened to it back, and we thought, yeah. We had just gone past it the day before. Now, sometimes that happens too. You get too complicated.
Sure, absolutely.
And we stripped it back and made it more minimal, and it really started to work.
Do you remember when Dave played Tell the Truth on Letterman?
No.
No,
I don't. I actually wish I'd have seen that.
Yeah, well, it's on YouTube if you want to check it out.
Oh, I should check it out.
Yeah, he did a beautiful job of that, actually. In 91, he went on Letterman. He actually tied his hair back in a pony and wore a suit. He looked really good. The whole presentation came off good. If Dave called you to do a blues album, would you be down?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you should do that.
Absolutely. I would be totally down for that. I think it would be so much fun.
I wanted to ask you a question about 40 Below. On the outro to that, it sounds like you and Jason are exchanging back and forth with solos. Was that planned out or just something you guys spontaneously were doing in the studio?
I think we just did it in the studio. There were some things, Bob and Dave allow for things to just happen. So there were times when we would start doing something and everybody would like it, So I think that probably just happened that way.
You also wrote a song on your Filthy Little Mouth, the 1994 David Lee Roth album called A Little Bit of Luck. Was that a leftover from the sessions from A Little Ain't Enough?
No, actually it wasn't. David called me one day and he said, Steve, I'm going to send over a track. I'd like for you to write something kind of like this.
Okay.
Or in this vibe.
Right.
Okay. He didn't mean I want you to write something like this. He meant this kind of vibe, this kind of groove maybe, a funky piece.
Right.
And I said, yeah, okay. So he sends over a couple of tracks. One was a Steve Winwood track, and then there was another one. I can't remember who it was, but they were kind of funky.
Right.
So I thought, oh, great, this might be fun. So I started working on it. It took me a couple of days, and I sent him the track that I had worked up, and he loved it.
Wow, that's great.
And I said, oh, great, man, that's great. And he wrote this, what he sang over it, and everything's fabulous.
Yeah, it was Nile Rodgers. He did a fantastic job with that.
Well, that was great because he actually flew me out to New York to do the rhythm guitar track.
Wow.
So I got to meet Niall, and I really loved it. Niall's the coolest guy ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's another guy I'd like to work with again.
Oh, yeah. He was fantastic. Why was Dave's bodyguard, Eddie Anderson, a co-writer on that song?
I think Dave told me that he had come up with the title and a couple of ideas for lyrics.
Okay.
Dave's cool about that. He's pretty generous when it comes to that. If you help him write a tune, I think he's pretty generous with that,
Okay.
What was the experience like when you went to record your guitar track?
Well, it was pretty fast because I was only there one day. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
Did you
meet anybody else in the band, or you were just overdubbing?
No, I just overdubbed. Everybody else had already done their parts. The other guitar player, God, I can't remember his name. It just escaped me. He's a nice fellow, too, and I can't remember his name, but hope he's not going to be mad at me.
Terry Kilgore?
Yeah, Terry. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had already done his part. He was there, and, of course, Niall was and stuff. And I came in the next day and recorded my guitar part, and then I was gone the day after that. So there wasn't a lot to do. I mean, there wasn't a lot other than just recording the thing and going home.
Dave wasn't there either?
Yeah, Dave was there, yeah.
Oh, Dave was there, okay.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's got to hear what's going on, and I appreciate that. I'm the same way.
Now, the original title of A Little Ain't Enough was called Cutting Out. Were you aware of that?
No, not at all.
Okay, and they had a different cover and everything. You guys didn't have a working title for the album?
No, I didn't know what the album was going to be called until it was close to being released, and then I started seeing the name.
Sure, absolutely. Have you kept up with Dave through the years? Kept in touch with him?
Not really. We had kept in touch maybe 3 or 4 years after the album, and I think I went over and did a couple of demos for him, demoing up a couple of things with Tuggle. But then I lost touch with him, and then, of course, I moved. I had moved around. I moved to Nashville. Nashville, and I'd moved all over the place. So we lost touch.
Okay. So what would you say is the biggest lesson you took away from the whole experience with Roth?
You know, I learned a little bit of something on every album I do. There's never been an album that I haven't learned something. And what I learned the most about that album is that when you get a band together of musicians like the caliber of Tuggle and the Bissonette brothers and Jason and stuff like that, the wonderful thing you do when you get in the studio is just when you plug in the guitar and you play the music, that's the whole key to it right there. There's no other bullshit, if you'll pardon the language.